Dallas Cowboys. See some beat reporters saying it shouldn't surprise you, but CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs are easily the two best rookies at camp, which sometimes other teams aren't having that. There's some first-rounders that aren't living up to expectation while UDFAs and day 3 picks are actually shining bright. How much of an impact do you think CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs have on this Dallas Cowboys team that is in a position to be competitive, that's in a position to potentially make a deep playoff run with Dak Prescott under center?
Yeah, I mean, we called it at the time of the draft. We said there was an absolute coup for them to get those two where they did. 17th overall for CeeDee Lamb was absurd. This guy was top 10 talent in the draft. And then Trayvon Diggs we saw as a borderline first-round talent to get him in the middle of the second round at a position that massive need for them after losing Byron Jones. Called it then, and to me, it's no surprise that CeeDee Lamb, you knew, was going to hit the ground running. That guy, he had it already. Trayvon Diggs, there were concerns on his tape, he got just manhandled by Jamar Chase. What is he going to do against more physical NFL wide receivers? But he has an NFL skill. Him getting manhandled by Jamar Chase, I think was a wake-up call for him in terms of he's physical enough that should not be happening, and that I think you're not going to see that at the NFL level. And he was 1 year removed from a serious injury. And I think that oftentimes you'll make that excuse for guys in the NFL. I feel like we rarely make that excuse for prospects to where it's oh, this is his first year back from an injury. It's the next year where he's going to turn it on. A lot of times we don't say that about a prospect that he missed all the season before. And I think you're seeing some of that with Trayvon Diggs.
I am super excited, obviously, for Trayvon Diggs, but also CeeDee Lamb in this receiving core. When Amari Cooper is getting a ton of attention, when Michael Gallup is working off what was a career year, I think CeeDee Lamb, he's not going to be a forgotten piece in this offense, but likely working a ton from the slot. And Amari Cooper will get in there as well. But I think there's going to be a chance that CeeDee Lamb is going against bad cornerbacks in the NFL and dominating because he was one of the more polished prospects coming out.
I'll say this is how you want to build a receiving core, is 3 guys that there's not one that's a slot receiver. There's not one that's an outside receiver. There's not one that has to be pigeonholed into X role. They can go wherever they want at any given time. They're all versatile body types that can win in a number of different ways. That's scary. But it's basically pick your poison. You play man coverage against them. Dak Prescott's where's my weak link? Where's my weakest corner? Attack that guy. And I think that's kind of what Mike McCarthy had early 2011 Packers when they had Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, James Jones, where it's just all 4 of those guys go pretty much anywhere and win. I think you're going to see a monster year from this Cowboys offense.
Another receiver I want to bring up, a rookie that's standing out in training camp and now has a ton of opportunity with Tyrell Williams battling what was a torn labrum and surgery there, is Bryan Edwards, a guy that you wrote a piece on for PFF.com saying temper expectations for Bryan Edwards coming out of South Carolina. We were not super high on Bryan Edwards coming out. Danny Kelly liked him. There's a ton of people in the draft space, specifically the fantasy community, that really did like Bryan Edwards. He had a good dominator rating, a good breakout age. But what are your reservations with Bryan Edwards? Because if I'm reading the timeline, this guy looks like the second coming of Jesus Christ. So it's hard to see, it's hard to see through all that positivity why there might be some reservations.
To be fair, he's going up against the Raiders corners. That's obviously going to make you look better. I mean, to some degree that does. But my reservations about him coming out were getting off the line of scrimmage consistently. He had one hesitation move, and it wasn't that special of a move. Now he wins with physicality more, is his game. To me, I think he can be a solid, above average possession type receiver, but it was just winning down the football field. Any route breaking more than 12 yards down the field was just unimpressive, in my opinion. That's why I just didn't think, and that's where, again, we value the guys who can do it after the catch, who are dynamic in that regard, and the guys who can do it down the football field, the possession stuff, that sort of thing, not nearly as high on those guys. But I think if that's the role he's playing in that offense, I wouldn't be surprised if he looks good in that side.
I'm convinced that he'll have a handful of star contested catches on tape this year. I'm not convinced that he won't have a ton of targets with Derek Carr. However, winning the valuable routes, separating on the valuable routes downfield against elite cornerbacks in the NFL, fast, athletic cornerbacks in the NFL, I'm not buying it. I don't see him being a good separator downfield in the NFL. And if you can't do that, I'm not going to buy into you being a good, wide receiver 1 type.
It's funny, Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards both looking good in camp. Derek Carr is going to give
Darren
Waller over 100 targets, and he's going to give
Hunter Renfrow
over 100 targets also, just because that's Derek Carr.
They're going to be running a more shallow route tree. 2 running backs I wanted to bring up: Cam Akers for the Los Angeles Rams and Antonio Gibson for the Washington Football Team, both running with the ones right now. We liked both of these guys. You highlighted Cam Akers as a guy that will outplay his draft position. Antonio Gibson, who ran with the wide receivers and ran a 4.39, everyone forgets about it, but it's up there with Jonathan Taylor in terms of athleticism. I think, again, hitting on skill players, so you might as well talk about the fantasy aspect. If these guys get touches, I think they can be more efficient than maybe they were at the collegiate level. Well, not Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson was one of the most efficient running backs or skill players in college football playing at Memphis. His missed tackle rate is absurd. I think both of these guys, though, I'm excited to see what they do in year one.
Gibson and Akers were probably in the draft the two most dynamic running backs with the ball in their hands. Like, they were the most difficult running backs to tackle if you're one-on-one with them in space, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that they're looking good right away. That is a skill that we've said again and again translates to the NFL. If you can break tackles at a high level in college, chances are you're going to do it in the NFL also. And Akers, to me, he's a better running back prospect than Darrell Henderson was coming out, for sure. The biggest thing with him was just vision, and it was difficult to evaluate with him behind that awful Florida State offensive line. Now, he might not be getting much better blocking with the Rams this year with what they got in the interior, but him looking like the running back one there is not surprising.
All right, two more offensive players I want to bring up before we dive on defense here. It's KJ Hamler, who ran a pretty sweet blaze out before getting injured in camp. And then Jerry Jeudy hasn't had a flashy highlight hit my timeline yet, but I consistently hear one of the better receivers in camp. And I think both those guys, as much as we are tempering expectations for Drew Lock compared to the Denver Broncos stands, I still think there is so much weaponry there in Denver that Hamler and Jeudy could have legitimate volume, legitimate targets, and see success on those targets in 2020.
Yeah, Jeudy, this should surprise no one. The way that guy ran routes in college was it's probably the most advanced I've seen, I don't know, since Mark Cooper, and like probably more than that. Mark Cooper's just bigger. Mm-hmm. The dude has a different way of getting open than anyone, like I said, anyone I've ever seen. It just moves in a ridiculous way, the way he just can contort his lower body and sink his hips throughout his routes. So that should come as no surprise. I wouldn't be surprised if he, outproduces Cortland Sutton year one. Like, he's just that good.
Wow. That's a hot take.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I thought Denver, the Denver fans like Jeudy and Hamler, they love Cortland Sutton. Oh, yeah. Don't throw any slander on that guy.
It's not slander on Sutton. That's just Judy's that good.
If Jeudy outperforms Sutton,
I think he could be Odell Beckham year one. Odell Beckham was over 100 yards a game as a rookie, and even though he played like 12 games or was close to that, Jerry Jeudy, I think, was just as talented.
High praise. All right, let's bring up Cameron Dantzler, Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson apparently is running with the twos more often than he is running with ones, but Dantzler, on the other hand, is taking advantage of opportunity in Minnesota camp, standing out quite a bit. We always said the tape was good. The tape was good. Then you had he ran like a 4.240 on his friend's phone, but like a 4.640 at the scouting combine. There were concerns with
like a 4.5 if you just actually timed it for real.
There were concerns with his arm length, concerns with his weight, and then concerns with his athleticism. But when you actually turn on the tape, you see him do it against Jamar Chase. You see him do it against some of the top receivers in the SEC. And I think playing in Mike Zimmer's scheme, he'll have more opportunities for success than some of these other corners. I think Dantzler will be a guy that shows up big for Minnesota.
Yeah, it was a good scheme fit, and he's already
Him and Gladney were both good scheme fits. Yeah. Zimmer knows what he's doing over there.
And he's already listed at 188, which...
beef season.
Up. Yeah, he was what? He looked like 175 on his college tape. So I think he wasn't just a combine overthink to an egregious degree to go all the way to the third round. This guy his tape was borderline first round. Obviously, you'd rather draft a guy who doesn't run a 4.6 in the first round, but I do think a lot of that was form based. It was one of the
start.
Ugliest.
The start was
one of the ugliest 40s I saw all spring. So I will say, I think he's going to be good. I have a piece coming out this week about the top 10 bold predictions for the rookie class. Cameron Dantzler, I think, is going to be with top 3 graded cornerbacks. I wrote that in the piece. So.
Oh, wow. There we go.
Top 3 graded rookie cornerbacks.
Last thing here before we jump to the Dane Brugler interview, we have Grant Delpit, Pour One Out segment. We haven't done a Pour One Out segment in a while. That's a segment near and dear to 2-for-1 drafts where we pour one out for someone who just hasn't performed well, suffered a big injury, whatever it may happen. Grant Delpit going to miss this upcoming season due to an injury. That is super unfortunate. I thought he had a real chance to be really good for the Browns. I thought the Browns draft was very good. This hurts.
Yeah, that he was supposed to, he was starting. He was running with the ones. I thought he was one of the steals of the draft in the second round. A torn Achilles to start your career, though, is really putting you behind the 8 ball, because it's no easy injury to come back for a guy that has to cover ground like a safety does. So that's unfortunate.
I don't even know what you do. Like, what do you work on as a rookie with a torn Achilles? Oh, man. Behind the 8 ball is an understatement, in my opinion.
I will say, Andrew Berry then, the coup, grabbing Curtis Weaver off of waivers
before the Dolphins can put him on the injured reserve,
Dolphins was a play that I can't believe the Dolphins would be so callous. They traded up to get him. They traded 2 draft picks to go get him, and then just flush it down the drain after 1 week of camp. That seems a little. They're playing with fire there, and I think they got burnt.
With Curtis Weaver, too, I think didn't have a great body. I think there were probably reasons like don't love his weight at this right now. He's got the injury, reason to kind of waive and put him on the injured reserve. But I want to go back to Andrew Berry's draft a little bit because it was a PFF-heavy draft. Jedrick Wills was a guy we really liked at 10. Grant Delpit was one of what we thought was a steal in round 2. Then they grabbed Jordan Elliott, the highest-graded interior defensive lineman in college football that past year. And then after that, Nick Harris was a guy that graded well at Washington. But then picking up Curtis Weaver now, another PFF favorite, a guy we valued more than the consensus. I'm impressed with Andrew Berry diving into the analytics and seeing that these numbers matter.
I'm saying I think people were just a year early on the Browns. I think they're gonna be good this year.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.